I wanted to check in and see if everybody's had an opportunity to experience our new mud feature out back. It's great if you need a little bit of clay to put on your skin. It's very moisturizing right now. You know, it's full of moisture. You can go help yourself if you need. We brought in like 50 plus dump trucks full of dirt. It wasn't what it was now. It used to be dry dirt. Now it's wet dirt, which is mud. But we're in the process of putting together the foundation of what we're doing in our expansion, our Base Camp 2.0. And you know, in my mind, it should be simple, right? Just make it flat, put some concrete on it. Let's build a little box, and then let's go just move this area over there, and it should move that way, right? I had a conversation. I don't know if y'all noticed this week, but it rained a little bit, which kind of impedes doing foundation work. And so I had a conversation with Jeremy, our contractor, who may or may not be sitting on the front row in front of me. And had a conversation with him. I was like, hey, can we hurry this? I'm just kidding. I had a conversation. I said, look, if people wanted to make shortcuts in a foundation, what are some things that we could do to maybe speed things along? And he said, oh, well, we could certainly not put as much concrete into it, you know. Like we can just cut back on the concrete, save us some money, and save a little bit of time, you know what I'm saying? We could cut back on some rebar inside of it. Maybe put a little bit in there, but maybe not all the places, you know what I'm saying? And when I talk about concrete and rebar, like these are big things, you know what I'm saying? Like we've got one little place where the big old steel pillar type thing goes. It's 8 foot by 13 foot by 2 foot. That's a lot of concrete, you know what I'm saying? So we scaled back a little bit. We might be ready to start, you know what I'm saying? When you think about, let's fast forward, let's say 20 years from now. 20 years from now, will we be happy? Will we be content? Will we be satisfied in taking the time to do that foundation correctly? Or will we be upset about it? Like, let's just say we can't get in before Christmas Eve. Would we be more upset that we were outside of our new addition on Christmas Eve this year, but it meant we got it right? Or would we be more satisfied that we took the time to get it right? I don't know if that was me or not. Which one do you think? My guess is that we would want to get it done correctly. That's my guess. I think in my heart, that's what I want to do. Also in my heart, I think we should have both. Like, let's get it done correctly and get it done quickly. You know what I'm saying? Just tell it not to rain. God, are you listening? I think it's appropriate that as we go into today, that we're talking about the idea of foundations. When we planted Foundation back in 2018, we started working on it March 2017. Sorry, this thing is giving me fits. March 2017, but we had our first gathering, like every Sunday gathering in January of 2018. I went through this huge list of what did I want the very first message to be? Like, what's the first thing? And I knew in my heart, I was like, there's going to be people that only come to Foundation one time. And they're going to come for that first Sunday just because they're like, man, we've seen this church. We've seen the ice cream truck in the parade at Christmas and 4th of July. We've seen the ice cream truck at events. Like, what is this ice cream truck church, you know? And we want to just go and just see, are they handling snakes? Like, what is happening inside of whatever they're going to do at Noonan High School? So I knew for sure that there were going to be people that only showed up one time. And because of that, I was like, man, what is the one thing, if I only got one opportunity to share one thing to people about what Jesus wants or desires, what would that one thing be? And I had a list, and I went through that list, and for months I went back and forth, and I would be like, man, this would be it. And I started like writing out these summary paragraphs, trying to think, if I only got one shot, what would it be? And we settled on the passage that I'm going to talk about today. But before we get into it, I want to share with you kind of our what I would have called our central theme or our bottom line from the very first Sunday we were at church 7.5 years ago, January 14th, 2018. And so I got up there, and I taught this passage, and then I gave this incredibly wordsmithed bottom line central theme that, looking back on it, just sounds like I was a caveman. Rock good, sand bad. That was it. That was it. And I was like, man, this is so good. good. In fact, it was our Wi-Fi password around here for a long time. Rock good, sand bad. All lowercase, no spaces. Rock good, sand bad. Foundation. This story we're going to share today is the first of 9 stories in a summer series that I think is going to paint a pretty good picture for you. We're going to start, though, with the conclusion of one of Jesus' messages today, which is the rock good, sand bad passage. And Jesus gives this illustration when he closes his teaching. So he's done an entire message, and at the end of his message, he then goes to this passage we're going to talk about today. And it's an illustration, it's this metaphor, it's this dueling metaphor that kind of throws out there and says, hey, in terms of what I just said and everything that I kind of just went over, I want to tell you or give you this word picture so you can process and decide what do you want to do about it. Now, when we say the Sermon on the Mount, this is the message that Jesus gives, very first time that he gives a message. And so it's like this big public, let me just tell you what I think. And honestly, if you were to go back and read the Sermon on the Mount, an enormous percentage of what Jesus thinks and teaches is found just in those 3 chapters, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. So many things in other places where Jesus' teaching has roots that go back to this first public teaching, the Sermon on the Mount. In it, we find themes like you should forgive your enemies, that you would live generously. He talks to religious people and says, hey, maybe you should learn how to fast and pray in secret instead of in public for public accolades. He walks through this idea of finding trust in God and allowing that to have more weight than worry. He even goes so far to encourage people to judge themselves before they start judging other people. There's so much more in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. But he has this closing illustration that helps people process, what do I want to do about it? And this is an incredible opportunity for us because as we walk through 9 different stories by Jesus, the conclusion is the same for us each week. This illustration. What do we want to do with it? And so week 1 of these 9 summer stories starts with the closing story. It starts with the story that we should see every other story or thing Jesus says through. This story is about 2 builders. Let's take a look at builder number 1 at the close of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 and 25. We'll start there. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. Rock good, sand bad. So when we think about this passage, there's a few key words I just kind of want to bring to life. The first one is that the first builder is described as a wise man. Now, when you hear the word wise or wisdom, just start to process, what are the things that you think of? If you had to define wise or wisdom, how would you define it? Now, I would go so far as to say that while Merriam-Webster's dictionary has the definition, I would imagine that many of you have your own definition of what wisdom is. Or maybe you would have a similar definition in terms of how you characterize it, but in terms of what you would say qualifies as wisdom, we might have varying opinions here. You might see one thing that someone says is, man, that's really wise. And some of you might say, I don't think that's the truth at all. I think that's a lie. I don't know how a lie could be wisdom. When you think of wisdom, where does it come from? Does it come from age? Is it that once you've gotten to a certain age, now all of a sudden, because of so many experiences that's taken place in your life, that now you have the ability, the opportunity to share, and that is wisdom? I don't know. When I'm thinking through wisdom, I've got some people in my head that are far advanced in terms of years from me that I would not say anybody in this world would qualify them as wise. They're like, I know, you can't say those things out loud. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to stop. That's not wise at all. I don't know if age always has something connected to wisdom. I think it certainly adds to it. What if I told you that there's a biblical version of wisdom? And honestly, maybe you could make the case that it's every version of wisdom, whether we want to accept it or not. What if we were to go so far as to say wisdom is the knowledge and thoughts of God? Maybe you've heard that phrase from God's perspective saying, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts, declares the Lord. My ways are higher than your ways. Like the idea that he knows a little bit more than we do, not just about who we are because he made us, but also the way the world works because he made it. And that he has some insight that we might not have because he doesn't sit in the muck and all the turmoil and chaos of our world. He sits above it, and he sees how all of these pieces, all of us interact in a community together. That he might have some insight that we don't, and that would be wisdom. Either way, we have this guy characterized as a wise man. And this wise man, he does something with the words of Jesus. He hears them, but then beyond that, it says he put them into practice. I love that it says he put them into practice. It doesn't say that he put them into perfection. In other words, Jesus isn't saying just because I tell you what to do, there's no need for the cross anymore. In other words, he's not saying if you were to hear my expectations, it is within your ability to meet every single one of those expectations, therefore no cross needed. And this says, look, you're going to practice what I have encouraged you to do, what I share with you, you're going to put those into practice. You can't put those into perfection because the cross is still a legitimate need in our life. This wise man hears the words of Jesus and says, I'm going to put them to use. I'm going to put them to work. It also tells us that this wise man who put the words of Jesus into practice, it says that the rain came, streams rose, and beat against his house. In other words, for this wise man who put the words of Jesus into practice, life was hard. Like life wasn't all that easy. I don't know what your version of the rains came and the waters rose and the wind beat against your house. I don't know what that is for you. Obviously, that's a metaphor. It's a word picture, but it means something real in your life. Like immediately as I say that, you probably can think of a very specific circumstance that says, that feels a lot like somebody's beating against my house. As I say those things, you're like, I remember, go back to this year, man, that was a really tough year. It felt like the water was rising around us constantly. Last thing that I think we should take a look at with builder number one is that he was a wise man. He put the words of Jesus into practice. Life was hard, but the result was his house didn't fall. In fact, this picture that he kind of presents with us is a picture of perseverance. That life happened, but he got through it. He persevered through it. It's a picture of resilience. It's a picture of endurance. It doesn't show us or paint a picture at all that the house was hanging on by a thread. It doesn't show us or make us feel like, hey, this wise man who put the words of Jesus into practice, life was hard, life happened, and his house barely survived. No, it says, no, it was still standing. Not just barely survived, but it was still standing. And then it gives us the reason why. Because he was aware of the words of Jesus, and he put them into practice. And the result was he survived. But not just got by, he persevered. He built resilience. He tested his endurance, and it passed. That's builder number one. Rock good. Builder number two. Matthew 7:26 and 27. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Now we have some contrasting pictures here. In the first one we had, in builder number 1, we had a wise man. And we said, hey, we think wisdom is going to be the thoughts and the ways of God. And we see that because he decided to take the ways and thoughts of Jesus and put them to practice. And this one, same version, same words of Jesus, but this guy decides, I don't want to put them into practice. And he is labeled as foolish. In other words, I don't know if foolish so much is all the time the things we decide to do, but sometimes it's the things we decide not to do. This guy is declared foolish before he does anything, other than he's decided, I don't want to put the words of Jesus into practice. I don't want to trust what he said. I don't want to value what he said over what I feel or think in this particular circumstance in my life. This opposite of wisdom, this foolish man. When you think of foolish people, who do you think of? Probably the guy that's like, hey, y'all watch this, you know? It doesn't end well. You kind of see it. It's about to happen, right? You're like, this is not good. But if he pulls it off, I mean, that's pretty special. I mean, we need friends like that in our life, you know what I'm saying? But that also requires that we're probably have to go to do some hospital visits a little bit for some broken hour. Like the whole 911, yeah, he is on the ground, you know what I'm saying? But if he had pulled it off, I mean, that would have been a story that you tell for generations, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we'd be old on the porch in the nursing home talking to each other about, hey, remember that one time so-and-so did that one thing over the handlebars backwards and behind himself? That was incredible, you know what I'm saying? We need some foolishness in our life, but probably not this kind of foolishness. Not this opposite of wisdom foolishness. He says he doesn't put them into practice. The truth is, though, everybody puts something into practice. Like everybody's doing something to build their house, to build their life. This foolish guy, he experienced the same thing that the wise guy experienced. Rain came, streams rose, beat against the house. Life's gonna life. The difference was the result. Well, the first guy that we read, it says it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But for this one, he built his house on the sand. And it says, and the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Why? Well, he heard the words of Jesus, and he didn't put them into practice. Now, here's the thing. Both of the builders, builder 1 and builder 2, they both hear the same words of Jesus. They both experience the same teaching. Jesus is giving this, remember, after that huge crowd listens to him to talk about all these different things that happen in life. And he looks at all of them. So all of them have heard the same message. And he just says, hey, you're going to fall into one of two categories moving forward. It's your choice. Builder 1 or builder 2. Let me tell you about builder 1. This is what's going to happen. Let me tell you about builder 2. This is what's going to happen. Now you get to choose. They both had the exact same words. In other words, the difference between the two guys, it's not knowledge. They both knew the same thing. The difference was obedience. That's a huge difference. Obedience, though, is not our favorite word. I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning and it's like, man, I can't wait to be obedient today. You know? Like, yeah, I'm glad this is on my plate. And in fact, I would say that word might even be offensive to people. Like, hey, bro, why do I have to be obedient? If he loves me, why would he want me to be obedient? Wouldn't he want me to enjoy like following him? No, I think he does. But I also think there's a really good chance you don't know what you don't know. In other words, you have this perception of what it would be like if you actually surrendered to Jesus. And that perception might actually be pretty awful. But just because you have a perception of what it would be like to follow Jesus doesn't mean you actually know what it would be like to follow Jesus. It just means that someone has gotten in your head, or maybe you watched a movie, or maybe you got some trauma because you saw someone else put the label of following Jesus on it, but they weren't actually following Jesus either. And so you've got this idea in your head, but the truth is you might not actually know what you don't know about following Jesus. It might be a mystery to you even though you think you know. For all of you who have the opportunity to speak into the life of a child, whether you're a parent or a fun uncle or a grandparent, I don't know, grandparents are spoiling kids these days. It's out of control. So maybe not you. But everybody else who's actually trying to bring a human being up in some structured way, you know what I'm saying? I'm kidding, grandparents are great. There's probably a moment when you've asked the kid to do something they didn't want to do. But you knew it was like, hey, this is what's best. Like you're like, hey, you know what? We've got to get up really early in the morning. You should probably go to bed, not like at 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, why don't we try like 10 o'clock? I know it's a weekend. We got to get started early tomorrow morning. I said, but it's a weekend. It's a weekend that also starts early tomorrow morning. You know what I'm saying? And your whiny behind needs a little bit more sleep than what you are planning for yourself. So we're going to go to bed, right? Now, in that moment, it's great when your kid is just like, okay, I'll go to bed. And they go to bed. They still didn't like it. It's not like all of a sudden you telling them they have to get up early made them think, you know what? That's the smartest thing I've heard all day. I think I'm going to adopt that 100%. Like, that didn't happen. No, that's a picture of what it looks like to be obedient. Because the kid, for some reason, said, I have this different opinion of what I want to do with my time this evening, but I'm going to do what you told me to. It's not what I want to do, but I'm going to do what you told me to. It's obedience. And so when the Father comes to us, when God the Father comes to us and says, hey, there's some things in your life I would like for you to take a look at, it's okay for us to say, that's not how I want to spend my time. I think that's a normal reaction when you hear something that's different than where you're at in terms of your own life or lifestyle or walk or relationship status or financial status or fill in the blank. I think that's okay for you to say, I'm not okay with what you're asking me to do. I think that's fine. The question, though, is, would you actually still be obedient? Or are you only willing to be obedient when you agree wholeheartedly and it feels kind of like it's your idea too? There's a really good example of a person's transformation and change of mind when it comes to following Jesus that we find in the Bible. Jesus had siblings. They're not talked about a lot. One in particular, which is the one we're going to talk about a little bit now. One of them's name was James. He was the little brother of Jesus. And James and the rest of his siblings, they weren't always in on Jesus being who he says he was. In fact, there was an extended period of time where they didn't think he was legit at all. Like he had just lost his mind, Which I also can get. Anybody else firstborn in here like I am? Right? So we all grew up thinking we were gods, you know what I'm saying? And that everybody, but Jesus literally was like, I am the Lord, you know what I'm saying? And so his little brother and sisters were like, yeah, okay, you know what I'm saying? So for sure, there was a period of time when James and the rest of that crew, they weren't on the same page. But there's an enormous shift that takes place after the resurrection of Jesus, where James goes from this disconnected, I don't really actually think my brother is the Son of God, to a leader in the church as a whole. So much so that he writes a book, and in it he gives us such incredible insight. Listen to what he says. This is the little brother of Jesus. He says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. So he's just saying the same thing. He's like, look, guys, I've been there. You can hear the words of Jesus. You can be aware of the words of Jesus. You can gather all the knowledge. But at the end of the day, it's about whether or not you want to do what it says. I love that he says, don't deceive yourselves. In other words, somebody else isn't pulling the wool over your eyes. You're pulling the wool over your eyes. You're the one deceiving yourselves when you listen to the words of Jesus and you convince yourself, nah, that's dumb. What does he know? No one else is doing that to you. You are making that choice. The second thing that we see in this story is not only do they both hear the words of Jesus, the second piece is both of them had life hit them really hard. Which I don't understand how there's pieces of Christianity, especially in the Western side of things, that get to a place where we preach a prosperity type of good news, where we try to convince people if you will give more to the church, if you will check off these boxes, that all of a sudden God's going to bless you 10 times what you've given, and all of a sudden I have enough money for a helicopter and a private jet. Like, I don't know how we get there, because the words of Jesus are so different. And Jesus says, do everything I tell you, right? Put my words into practice. In other words, build a strong foundation. Rock good, sand bad. Build your entire life on my words. Put my words into practice. And then let me tell you what is guaranteed to happen. The rain's going to come. The waters are going to rise. And the wind is going to beat at your house. That doesn't sound like health and wealth and prosperity. That sounds like the reality of life. That Jesus says, following me and doing what I tell you to do will not keep you from it. It's still coming. In fact, Jesus would go so far to say, it's because it's inevitable that life is hard, because sin is real and evil is alive. It's because of those realities. That's why your foundation matters more than ever. Because it is going to happen to you. You can't escape it. The truth is, the storm didn't create the cracks in Builder 2's foundation. It just exposed them. You know, you don't really know what's under your life until it's tested. What is it that shows your foundation? What is it that shows your foundation? Is it a financial crisis? Is it a financial crisis that creates like fear and panic? Or is it an opportunity for you to grow in faith because of God's provision? Is it a relational breakup or a betrayal? In that moment, do you collapse because you based your worth on that relationship? Or do you have the ability to hurt without being destroyed? Because your identity was in Christ and not in another human being. Is it when you lose a job or face some career uncertainty? In those moments, do you feel like you've lost your purpose? Or do you firmly believe that God can redirect your story? Is it a health diagnosis or a health scare? Do you panic in that moment and try to control every single thing? Or do you cling to a peace that goes past any of our own understanding? I want to push pause in our list right there. For those of you who were unable to be here yesterday for Lisa DeWeese's funeral. Funeral's not it. She told me she wanted no funeral. It was a celebration of life. If you don't know Lisa, Lisa is the wife of our student pastor, Rich. And she was diagnosed with cancer about 3.5 years ago and has been fighting and battling it, and went home to be with Jesus a week ago today. So her service was here yesterday, but I want to tell you with that one in particular, that health diagnosis that shows your foundation, she was a really great example of what it looks like to cling to peace that passes any kind of understanding. In fact, if you haven't been able to, she's got a Facebook page that she did some writing over the last 3 years as she underwent treatment. And there's these really gorgeous, just beautifully written, vulnerable moments in life from the chemo chair. She would always take a picture of her feet under a blanket or a drink sitting next to her table or an IV or something like that, and she would post it, and this was her view for the day. Sometimes it's out the window or sometimes it's the IV thing, and then she would just start writing. And she would just share, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm praying, this is what I'm asking for other people to pray. I don't know if I'll ever find another human being as long as I live that illustrates what it looks like to fight cancer at that level and have such an enormous trust in God. For sure, the last 3 years, the wind came, the rain fell, and the waters rose. And everybody got to see what kind of foundation she had laid. Rock good. Maybe it's being criticized or misunderstood. Maybe that gets at you. Like, how dare someone criticize me? And when that happens, immediately we go into this uber defense mode, and maybe we even say things or we push into some kind of conflict that's just probably not what we would be proud of. Does it wreck you? Does it make you so defensive? Or do you have confidence even in the midst of being humbled of who you are and what you've been called to? Maybe it's a transition like moving or graduating, or maybe some of you are entering into a stage of being empty nesters. And you're wondering, does this change unravel my sense of stability? Or do you have the ability to carry a peace with you because you know that while circumstances in life move, your foundation doesn't move? Or this is a sneaky one. Maybe it's success and praise. Maybe when everything starts to go well for you, that's what actually shows your foundation. Because you begin to live out the words of those success instead of staying grounded and someone that's approachable. Or maybe it's being alone. Maybe silence and solitude make you anxious. Or maybe even restless. Maybe you've been building your life on noise and people pleasing. Or just something to keep you distracted all the time so you don't have to face what you probably ought to face. Or maybe it's a moral failure or a sin that's been exposed. Do you run and hide? Do you knowingly blame someone else who's not responsible? Or do you own it? Are you quick to say, I got it wrong? Are you able to say, I want to change the way I see that issue and the way I act in those moments and begin to rebuild on grace? So to close, I've got 2 questions for you. Question number 1. Which builder are you? Don't dodge the question. Answer it for yourself. In your mind, up until this very moment, which builder are you? Which builder are you? If you don't have an answer in your head, get an answer. Which builder are you? Builder 1, builder 2. On the rock or on the sand? Which one? If you're having trouble, let me rephrase that question. Still question 1, but I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. what have you done with the words of Jesus? What have you done with them? That will inform which kind of builder you are. I think in theory, all of us want to be, build on rock, brother. You know what I'm saying? I'm rock builder. Rock good saying bad. Me no bad, you know? But the real question is, what have you done with the words of Jesus? That tells us. Truth is, we all do something with the words of Jesus. We got 3 options here. Option 1, we can ignore them. Not for me, right? Those words are not for me. Thank you, Jesus, for the Sermon on the Mount. Thank you so much. Those are not for me. Not interested. Option 2, we can pick and choose which we like and we don't like. I happen to like that Jesus says we should love our neighbors. I love love. Love feels good. This is great. Love my neighbor. I wish he would cut his grass more, but I love my neighbor. You know what I'm saying? Love my neighbor. This is great. But then there might be some other things that Jesus says where we're like, that feels a little bit too much like obedience. And remember that? That was a word I didn't like. It kind of offends me. And there's some things that Jesus might have some thoughts to say about some things that are in my life that I don't like. So I want to pick and choose what I want to do in terms of what I want to put into practice. Or option 3 is just simply you put them into practice. Those are our choices. Honesty here is key. Not for my sake, but for your own spiritual sake. Now here's the thing. It's hard to be honest about where we're at with these things. It's difficult. Because I know as you're thinking, you're like, hold on. All right. Okay. If I were to try and put some words of Jesus into practice that I've decided I don't want to up until now, that would be hard. It would make my life difficult. It would create some awkward conversations. I get that. But be honest. Where have you been? Question 2. And here I think is the better question. Question 1, I think, helps start the conversation. Question 2 is the conversation. Question 1 is we found a mine to do some digging in. Question 2 is we found gold, right? Question 2 is where it's at. Which builder do you want to be? That's the better question. Right? Question 1 is, up until now, which builder are you? But question 2, which builder do you want to be? Because the truth is, up until now, that's all about your past. That's all about your past. And as long as you're willing to be honest about your past, it's just the past. When we're dishonest about our past, it stays in our future because it's still a reality we're not willing to admit or be truthful about. But as long as we're willing to be honest about our past, it stays our past. The question really is, who do you want to be? Like if honestly right now, if you got a chance, do you even want to put the words of Jesus to practice? And it is hard. It's a lot of work. Here are some things that make it difficult. There's a lot of us that probably have made decisions that have put our life in a place where if we were to start undoing those things, it might hurt some people. They might be offended. They might be sad. They might grieve a little bit because the relationship changes. They might be upset with us because our standard of what we expect out of ourselves would raise a little bit, which then impacts what maybe they are a part of or what they contribute to or what they indulge in. That's a big question. But it's still your choice. You get to choose as you move forward, who do you want to be? What kind of builder do you want to be? And it really is caveman simple, rock good, sand bad. The thing is, this isn't a them story. This isn't a close out the Sermon on the Mount, tell us about 2 builders, rock and sand. It's about us. It's a me story. It's a you story. This summer, it's my hope that every single summer story by Jesus that's shared with you, you would walk through week 1 and think to yourself, I just heard the words of Jesus. What do I want to do with those words? Do I want to put them into practice? Or do I want to not put them into practice? Because every week, we're going to share a principle that's a big deal to Jesus. And every week, it's the same closing story. Wise man heard the words of Jesus, put them into practice, and he built his house on the rock. And life is inevitable. It's gonna happen. And when it does, it won't hang on by a thread. It will stay standing strong. Or the opposite. A foolish man heard the words of Jesus and said, no, I'll build my life how I want to build my life. And life is going to happen. And then the house comes crashing down. The thing is, I have so many opportunities to sit with individuals and couples, and a lot of times when we finally start to get to see some movement in a positive direction, it's after the house crashed and fell. For some reason, that's such a great motivator for people to make a change. But I'm telling you, I don't have a single couple that have decided to make a change to Jesus, or individual that decided to make a change to Jesus, that would encourage any of you to just keep sand living. Every one of them would stand in front of you and say, hey, it is so much better for you to tear down your own house and rebuild on rock than to wait for the wind and the rain and the water to tear it down and then rebuild. Either way, rebuilding's got to occur. Transformation isn't just fairy godmother, bippity boppity boop, pumpkin to Cinderella. Like, that's not real life. Like, it's gonna take some work. And every one of them would tell you, put the work in. Don't let it be forced on you, because the pain that comes with being in a house when it crashes, it's a lot. It's doable. It's doable. But save yourself the heartache. Life's hard enough as it is, much less to deal with life without a good foundation. In other words, don't take shortcuts. Do it the right way. Take the time, no matter how much it takes. Because while it might be inconvenient to slow down now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you will be so glad you did the foundation correctly and took the time to get it right. Rock good, sand bad.